Hi, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Hillard. I'm the Regional Communications Director here in Connecticut and Rhode Island, and I am joined today by my colleague, John Basso. Hi, John. Welcome.
Hi, how you doing today?
I'm great, John. Thanks so much for joining us. So today is Giving Tuesday, and we want to talk about the work of the American Red Cross here in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and across the country. So, John, do you mind giving us a little bit of background about you, your role, and how you got started with the Red Cross?
Sure. I'm the Senior Community Disaster Program Manager for the Connecticut Rhode Island region. That means I oversee all programmatic things in disaster, everything from our response to disasters to our preparedness programs, our external relations, and our client care, everything. I kind of oversee everything across the two states. I started with the Red Cross back in 2012, so it's been a little while, because I wanted to help. I wanted to give back. I wanted to be able to help people. I had some time while I was going back to school to get my master's in public health. And so it was a great opportunity to be able to volunteer my time. Um, Lo and behold, when I was graduating, there was a position open. I was able to take that, and I've been here ever since. I'm growing in my role. And like I said, I'm in the new Senior Community Disaster Program Manager. And it's been a great, a good, I don't know, almost 12 plus years with the Red Cross.
That's wonderful. And so obviously you have a passion for disaster response, for helping people. Can you talk a little bit, when you mentioned you joined as a volunteer, you started off as a disaster action team responder, right? So can you talk about that?
Sure. So a disaster action team member is someone who wakes up 24 hours a day to help people who are displaced from home fires, which about 60,000 a year. So here in Connecticut, Rhode Island, we respond to an average of 3 a day across the 3 states. And so as a disaster team member, we show up when we're requested by the fire department or people that are displaced, and we give them that immediate needs assistance that help them start the recovery process, which is a long process, but we're there to lend comfort, give them some, emergency assistance, whether it's a blanket if it's cold, or give them some guidance on where to start the process and recovery. So yeah, I started doing that. And those are everywhere from a single fire, single home to an apartment building. So they're obviously the more people impacted, the more complex it gets. But that's something I always enjoyed, is helping people truly in their time of need.
That's wonderful, John. And so kind of continuing through your Red Cross career, you're also a national disaster responder. So talk to me about that.
Sure. So I started out in sheltering because at our bare nature of the Red Cross, when there's a disaster, we help with sheltering and feeding, putting a safe roof over people's heads and making sure they have sustenance to live. Started in sheltering, and I moved into operations management, and that's where I currently have a lot of my experience. And that's overseeing like all shelter operations, all feeding operations, or distribution of emergency supplies, and working with all the other groups. We do damage assessment and things like that. So, operations management works with all the information planning and all the other groups that deal with the disaster. And we make a lot of the decisions that directly impact the recovery and help of people. So again, it starts with sheltering and feeding, and then it migrates into distribution emergency supplies, and then recovery services, helping people, financially or with referrals, and it goes even into long-term recovery. So it could be quite a long process to recover from a disaster.
All right, wonderful. So when you were just mentioning that you deployed as a disaster responder, now kind of take us back. So you went to Alaska earlier this year, actually just a couple months ago, after a devastating typhoon changed the lives of so many. First off, thank you for going and being there. But we really wanted to take some time to talk about that.
Sure.
So please, start from, you know, what what got you started, what made you want to go, and really just your experience there.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, we were responding to the remnants of Typhoon Halong, which, was supposed to go up the Bering Strait, but instead decided to hit southeast Alaska. Winds of, hurricane force winds and storm surge impacted a lot of the native tribes. Um, I raised my hand because I always raise my hand when I have ability. It's a 3-week commitment for me to deploy to these in operations management. So the timing was right, the need was there, and obviously I raised my hand to go. Of unique experience. I've never been to Alaska, but a lot to learn too, because we were helping a lot of the native tribes who have their own unique cultures and their own unique ways of life. And so I had to quickly learn some of those cultural things that were going to allow me to help them better. So that's something that I was unique to any of the deployments I've ever done before, but definitely something that ended up being truly rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a special way to give back, and not one that many people in Connecticut have experienced. So can you share a moment that really stuck out to you? I'm sure there were many, but maybe choose
Yeah.
one.
So I had a number of conversations with some displaced families. One in particular stands out. The gentleman was describing his mother and his younger brother who were in their house, and the storm surge came and it raised the house off of its foundation and started bringing them out to sea. And there was a small bridge in the community, and the house got hung up on that bridge, and that's what saved them. No injuries, they were rescued, but that harrowingness of am I going to survive this? The house is floating literally down a river. And just, the way, when he found out about it, the horror he felt, and being able to share, that they were both rescued, both safe. And, they had told their stories, but I heard it from a different perspective. I heard it from a concerned son. And, it made a huge impact on him. And being able to talk to it about it really, I think helped him. And it really helped me understand the direness of the situation that many families faced. These are low-lying areas close to the sea, and they're usually along riverbeds. And then when you have that storm surge that came in up the river, 5-6 feet of storm surge, that's all they have. And so, it lifted off a lot of homes, and I unfortunately did witness a lot of devastation.
How did your team work together to meet the needs of the community?
All right, so, when I first got on the ground, I did something called reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is high level disaster assessment. I was being sent to different villages to understand the damage that occurred, high picture, how many homes may have been impacted, how many people were staying in shelters, how many people were evacuated, what are the immediate needs of the community, what are their priorities? Is it food? Is it sustenance? Is it getting more transportation to remove people and evacuate them? So high level, just trying to understand the needs and the priorities of each community. And then I had to write up a report, bring it back to our operations headquarters. And we used those as a tool to talk to our state partners and other organizations that were on the ground and start meeting needs. Just a quick aside, there was a local in Bethel, Alaska, which I was headquartered out of. There was a local animal organization, rescue, and they had rescued about 175 dogs from the different villages. They choreographed a whole bunch of small planes. They got them in. And anyway, they had a need for food. And I was able to, just one example of, I got them a pallet of food delivered, to just help them in their mission. And we did that consistently, in the different villages. What's your priorities? And then as assets and different supplies started coming in, is trying to get a picture of where they could be needed most and where were they needed most. And so, my reconnaissance mission kind of turned into a distribution of emergency supplies. We had a warehouse in Anchorage, and to give your viewers a picture where that's over 400 miles away. The only way to get anything into Bethel was by plane or by boat in the summer. Well, the rivers were already starting to freeze, so boats are out. And then from Bethel, you're flying another hour, 45 minutes to an hour and a half to each of these different villages that had different needs. So we developed a plan where we were getting all these supplies into Anchorage, and using different partners and the National Guard, we were able to get everything from Anchorage to Bethel. And then we had a fleet of donated planes and pilots. We were loading small planes, and they were bringing things to the different villages that were going to help them start the recovery process, to replace some of their freezers, which are critical to their subsistence living, making sure they have food for the winter, and other supplies. So it was truly a morphing role. It didn't stay static, but I'm happy to say that we moved while I was there, we moved 14,000 pounds of supplies into all the villages that were most impacted.
That's amazing, John. And I think sometimes we don't realize all of the logistics that go into a disaster response. And we also have to recognize the flexibility, not only of the community that we're serving, but also the people who are there to help. You mentioned that you start the day thinking you're going to accomplish one thing, and you find a greater need or a new priority throughout the day. So it's so important that, we're just all working together, that we're maintaining that communication, and that we're all really focused on that one mission, which is to help those who have been impacted, and those who have been volunteers on the ground, those who volunteer locally, or those who give financially to help support, are all making a difference in these large efforts. And certainly that comes to light every single day when we're responding to disasters. But I'm sure that was very evident for you in your most recent disaster response experience. So I'll ask you one last question, but how did this deployment shape your perspective on service and community?
So this was a community that was vastly different from my own, which is not uncommon in any disaster. You're going to encounter pockets of people that you're not culturally attuned to. It might be a new language, a new culture, maybe new diets. But what this deployment really drove home for me is that we can't do anything we do at the Red Cross without really engaging in that community and understanding, specifically asking what are their needs, what are their priorities, not what are our priorities, what are their priorities. And that's my takeaway that I came away with, is that here I'm going into a unique culture, and they had specific needs, and those needs weren't my needs or your needs, but they were their needs. And really listening to them, understanding what they were going through, and understanding what they set as priorities, and then being able to turn around and then execute on a lot of that and really get them the help that they requested, was truly rewarding. But that whole idea of listening to people and adapting and making changes to what they need really is what makes the most impact. You know, we're helping people on their worst day of their lives often. And they may not remember me, but they're going to remember that I was there listening to them. I was letting them determine what was going to be able to help them, and then to follow through with that, I think is so key.
And John, obviously those stories will stay with you forever. So thank you so much for joining us, taking the time to share your story.
My
If
pleasure.
you know, there's a lot of information about our work in disaster, about our work in Alaska, or our work here locally in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and you can do so and learn more by going to redcross.org. Thank you very much, John, for your time, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.